Good morning. Good morning. How are you all? Maybe pop in the chat if you can hear me okay. I've been moving my stuff around my desk, so you never know. Thank you, Melinda. Good morning. To see you. See you, kind of. It's always weird to log on. I expect to see everybody, and it's just my webcam. So I hope you all are doing great. We're excited to chat with you all this morning. I was just thinking on the walk back up to my house from dropping off my son that, the chorus is definitely here to share things with us, but mostly they're responding to our asking. And our asking is part of how we show up here. But then, also it is how we vocalize questions. So I just want to assure you that, you can ask from your heart or you can ask here in the chat or, however you want to do it, but that the asking is part of the recipe. They respond. They don't butt in. It may feel like they butt in sometimes to our lives or our perspectives, or at least in my life, but they haven't really. It's that we're the ones who have expanded, and we're the ones who are showing up and developing the new perspective. We ask and they answer. So with that, I will say, does anyone have a burning question? Did anyone show up today with I really want to understand what the chorus says about this? And we'll start there. I'll give you guys a minute to type it in. And then if not, I'll bring them through, see what they have to say. And then we'll open up the floor to anyone who would like to come on stage with them, or just type in the questions to the chat, or in the ask a question area too. I can check both. Okay, Melinda. Let me move this over so I can see. All right, Melinda says, I have a question I will try to articulate. I'm wondering if the way I forget things often is part of the awakening or just being human. Fascinating that you have asked this. So right now, the chorus is, really moving through time and memory. And I think what a lot of us are coming to are more and different questions about our experience of memory and what may also be happening. So I'm thrilled you asked this. So tell you what, why don't I bring them through? Any other questions? Any other burning questions that brought you here today? Or just open curiosity is fine too. Okay. So I'm going to bring them through, and they'll probably have some things to say just in general. And then they may answer that question as part of their things to say, or they may then answer it at the end. And then if you want to come on stage and interact with them, I highly recommend it. These videos will probably be shared. Linda says, sure. Okay, great. So, be comfortable with being seen. Maybe if we post these videos. But honestly, I feel like a lot of us have similar questions. So I think a lot of people will appreciate that you came up on stage to ask the questions. But I think it's more fun to interact with them personally. Okay. All right. So there's no other burning questions to log, then I'll go ahead and bring them in. Dear ones, how delighted we are to be with you again. For you see, the frequency is increasing, is it not? Things are accelerating in all directions. And that is an interesting part of your human perspective of these things. Often when we say accelerating, we understand that many humans will envision a straight line, a rocket ship shooting forward. And when we say accelerating, perhaps it is closer to what a human might call a spherical shape, moving outward in all directions, expanding in a perspective that takes in more of different, more of all aspects, more of everything. And so you see, humanity right now is ballooning, we could say. You are moving outward. And in doing so, it is not a sequence of events that you will come across that is one and then the other and then the other on your path of awakening. It is that there are many lines There are many directions that are developing for you right now. In the beginning, it may be difficult for you to see progress because these lines will feel very disconnected for a human. It will be difficult in the early phases to understand what the lines are even about, or perhaps that there are even multiple directions that you are moving through. It will be difficult to see the connections because the variety is increasing. Human identity, though you may not view it as such today, is often linked to a one at a time or a linear pattern. That is, you see yourself as a person evolving step by step into a different area of your life, a different phase of your life, a different interest. You allow yourselves perhaps careers and hobbies or family and enjoyment, but you do not allow yourself millions and trillions of different interests and activities and topics. That would be very difficult at this juncture for a human mind to accommodate. But it is not difficult for your energetic self. As you move through your days and you feel a feeling that guides you towards a new direction, that is your energetic self navigating things. You may feel drawn to do a series of very illogical events, perhaps jumping from one thing to the next, perhaps not finishing things the way you used to, perhaps taking a first foray and then leaving it for weeks at a time. And you see, this is your energetic self moving between the sphere of all the lines that are moving out from you at this time. The logic of mind will question how these things could possibly be connected or even progressing. How can something move forward when you look at it once or contemplate it once and then forget to think about it for perhaps weeks at a time? A human will say, "Oh, darn, I should have remembered. I should have continued to work on that thing." But your energetic part of yourself will say, "Why?" You were moving outward in all directions, and in so doing, every direction that you move in very naturally complements and expands all other directions. So you see, that thing that you thought about that one time and then forgot about, in that moment of remembrance, when you realized you forgot it, has just been brought back to you by way of all the other seemingly disconnected things that you had been doing in the interim. You made a full tour, you could say. Therefore, memory plays a very important part, doesn't it? For there are, moment to moment, things that you remember and things that you don't. As you remember that there are things that you have not remembered, the human belief system will say that something was lost. For as you begin to recognize that there has been something there that you have not held in your conscious perspective, your belief systems energize and suggest to you that things are missing. In so doing, you energize the experience of missing. There is much, dear ones, that as you expand spherically and as you move through, you will realize that you had been missing for many, many thousands of years, you could say. There is much that you all had chosen to forget by way of this desire and this perfect, extraordinary, unprecedented, and expansive experience of limitation. When you recall these extraordinary aspects of yourselves that you forgot, you will feel, most likely, two aspects. For your consciousness is expanding to contain more than one aspect at a time. One of those aspects, the beliefs from which you are expanding, will say, "We are lost. We are so sad. How could we have missed so much?" And this is valid, and this is true. It was a beautiful part of what you chose to construct here. And also, there will be an energetic part of you that celebrates, that relishes this reconnection for the experience of being reconnected, for the experience of having been apart, for the experience of having missed it and getting to find it all again. For you see, that part of you knows that there is no loss unless you want to create the experience of it. And therefore, what you have given yourselves perhaps could be viewed as an extraordinary and unparalleled homecoming. That by way of missing these things, you got to experience powerful things. And now you have the opportunity to enjoy the deliciousness of reconnecting, not only with parts of yourself, but with many, many beings throughout all creation who have been there this whole time. We love you infinitely, as you know, and we are delighted to speak with any of you who would wish to speak with us. Okay, this is Katie again. I know, is it a little weird? It's a little weird for me. It's like I'm talking and they're talking and then it's me again. Sometimes I'm like, I should create a little sign that says like, "It's Katie." It's the chorus. I'll just flip it around every time. Okay, so Melinda, if you want to come up on stage now, I'm going to I think I just clicked this button next to you. Let me see if I can find you. People. And then I think all you do is say yes. Invite on screen. Let's see if it works. Hi, Jessie.
It works.
Ah, there you are.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Good.
Okay. So if you don't mind, I'll bring them through again and then maybe just say your question again because I think we re-express it. It comes through again.
Okay.
So, all right. Yes, dear one.
Hi. So I have the question. I often forget things that seem important, and one in particular was listening to your recent podcast, and Katie mentioned previous podcasts where anxiety was discussed, and I remember having listened to it, but I couldn't remember anything about it. And I'm like, I feel like that was important, that I should have remembered those things about that podcast. And so that got me curious as to whether that's a part of the awakening or that's a part of the human experience, because I don't seem to be as affected by it as everyone else around me seems to be concerned about their memory.
Meaning you are not as concerned as others, you believe, about the things that you do not remember?
Yeah, where other people just kind of um, are worried about their memory loss. And for me, it's kind of like, well, I guess I don't need it anymore.
And do you remember a time when you may have felt differently?
It was a period of time in my adult life when I was trying to be like other people. So as a kid, I didn't care about the things I couldn't remember. But then I got into a space in my life when I wanted to be like other human adults. And so it bothered me then. And now I don't care as much again. So it's not bothering me as much anymore.
Wonderfully said. And
Okay.
so, what do you think you might be expressing to yourself every time you recognize that you may not be as concerned about this aspect as others might be?
Well, I think it's that the very dual thing that you were just talking about. I have this one part of me that's like, should I be more concerned? And maybe I'm concerned about the not feeling concerned, but then also I'm telling myself it's good, it's all good. I trust that if I need to know it, it's going to come back around again. So it's kind of both.
Well said. We would agree. We would say that oftentimes memory is a tool of awakening, not always in terms of the five senses thing that is remembered, but in terms of the aspect energetically of yourself that you are recalling that is able to access different wavelengths. There is an ease in that part of yourself because it understands that by way of memory and imagination, you are able to access those other frequencies. And so there is no barrier, there is no hindrance. So, as we have discussed and will continue to, by one viewpoint, memory is an aspect of linear time in which you are recalling to yourself other things that happened to you already in this lifetime, perhaps as a human would define it, from this conscious perspective. That is a valid perspective, and nothing we are about to say will invalidate the aspects of linear time. We have a sense that humanity believes that as you awaken, you will sort of jettison the idea of linear time and move on to something better. Please understand that for all humans who are participating in the game and for many other beings out there, different variations of the perspective of linear time are very sufficient to help them to explore these aspects of creation. There is nothing inherently wrong in the view of time as linear. It simply serves different functions, it serves different experiences. So, another equally valid way to look at time is as fluid and moving around a central point that you might call the present moment. All aspects are emanating from the present moment, meaning, as you sit in the present moment and you have a memory, that memory is a amplified reflection from a different frequency of what you are currently creating in the present moment. It is an added perspective of what you are doing in your present conscious state. Humans right now are just coming to a place of being able to relate to this. Is there not in your consciousness already an understanding that sometimes what you are doing in the present moment can trigger, as a human would say, a memory? Yes?
Mhm. Yeah.
So perhaps you are unpacking holiday decorations and then are reminded of other experiences with those decorations or with the holidays. Therefore, humanity is well aware that the five senses aspect of the present moment can trigger other memories. We, being from an energetic perspective, would say it slightly differently. that you are in an energetic place, that you have manifested these beliefs about holidays and about the experience of these things, and you are generating rendezvous with all sorts of manifestations that reflect those perspectives. And also, you are able to reach a different frequency that reflects to you an added perspective of that current, present moment, energetic place that you are in. There are many civilizations who view time closer in this way. And they are able to either hop about between these other frequencies and look at the current moment from different perspectives, or some are very vast and are able to see multiple moments in time at once. It is considered more information about the present moment. That's all. It is nothing more dangerous or scary, or I might fall off my timeline and be lost forever kind of thing than that, though we understand humans often feel this way. For there has been great attachment to your concept of linear time because that has been a great function of your limitation in the past. And oh, but didn't we just cause a tangle in your minds when we said in the past? For we have just jumped between two different perspectives of time. And your belief systems are not quite there yet, but they will be. So we will say this. Your ability to recall in the present moment that there are things that you are not recalling in the present moment, but that you are not concerned about doing that in the present moment, is a reflection of your comfort and your allowance of the present moment.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions for us?
I do not. That was it.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll close you off now. All right. Anybody else? Questions on time, podcasts, things they've said, things that you're going through, anything at all? And if we don't have any questions, then that's all right. We can wrap up. Jesse says, if you have time, LOL, I'd love to hear more about their definition of healing, though maybe that's a whole other session. Oh, such a good topic. Yes, I would love to talk about that. And it is a big topic, but we'll see what they say. Do you want to come up and interact with them? Or do you want me to just take that question and run with it in a straight line? Take that question and run zigzag. Deal. All right, I'll bring him back through. Beloved ones, you have many questions about your bodies, do you not? What a fascinating preoccupation humans have created for themselves in their mind-body instrument. As you know, we view the mind-body instrument as a unified field of perspective, meaning you have resonated with frequencies, the first manifestations of which were beliefs, and those beliefs create the perspective of your bodies and everything else, we might add. So, what is it then to be sick? We would say that illness is a judgment in your belief systems of a way that the body should behave and is not behaving. It is, you could say, an expression of finiteness and insufficiency with which you are resonant. Therefore, it is the culmination of everything you came here to experience. Now, humans do not like it when we say that because you do not prefer the experience of being sick. And so when you tell a human, particularly a human who is in an acute experience of illness, that they created it, it feels like blame. Therefore, what is blame? Blame, by our standpoint, is a version of powerlessness that you created. This version of powerlessness is very interesting to us, for it is a reflection to yourself of your own powerlessness that you see in an expanded perspective, therefore blinding you to the expanded perspective that would otherwise come through to you. If you were not busy blaming yourselves, you might be open to a new idea or a new avenue or a new method that may address the healing and quite readily resolve it. Therefore, healing is not so much about what to do with the end output, with the illness. Healing has more to do with what goes on a little upstream in terms of being able to allow in the expanded perspective that resolves the limitation. That is perhaps a reflection of the release of limitation. As you have heard from others before, were you not held down by these beliefs, you would bob up to the surface very naturally. It is your beliefs that are creating the experience of illness until such time as you are ready to believe that healing is possible, that maybe this happened for a reason, that perhaps it's going to work out in a way you didn't expect. These beliefs are all simply versions of being, as a human would say, at peace with the present moment. It is a lightening up of the judgments of the present moment that constantly assess the five senses manifestations and find it to be insufficient, deficient, or an issue that needs to be solved and solved immediately. So you see, we are back to time, aren't we? Is there a relationship between how urgently someone feels a disease needs to be addressed and the degree of limitation that they are experiencing? Often so in the five senses environment for a human. And you will say, hold on, chorus. The disease progressed and then the urgency increased. That is a valid perspective when all you are able to perceive are five senses manifestations, when you are unaware of what you are feeling or what you are believing. But now that you are starting to expand, now that you are starting to feel things beyond the five senses, is it not possible that you sense in someone a growing agitation that then later manifests as a worsening of symptoms? So you see, even as part of the design of your extraordinary game, you blinded yourselves from the root cause. So, what might healing look like in this more expanding day and age? Well, you are already on your way with the question. You are asking for a new definition of healing. Thus, you are already on your way. And what you may find is that healers have much more to do with the energetic root cause than they do with the five senses outputs of those beliefs, meaning the disease. Healers of your future time, were we to use your linear timeline, and it pleases us very much to do so, healers of your future time will have a greater flexibility in understanding, in sensing the energetic position of those that they assist. In so doing, they hold a light. They are lighthouses that radiate the steps to take to gradually move from a frequency of disallowance, a frequency of disease, as you might say, into an easier, more allowing, perhaps more relaxed space. In so doing, they guide the patient, as you could say, into more free-flowing energy, which very naturally precipitates into healing. Said another way, those who are ready to be healed will recognize the light of the healer. It is a partnership. As you well know by now, you cannot heal someone who is not ready to be healed. That term, ready, has meant a variety of things. But as you are now expanding, you are coming to understand that that ready is an energetic sense. You can sense when someone is ready to be healed and when they are not. It is evident to those of you who are expanding into these frequencies. The only thing that's missing is your confidence and your ability to sense that. So then, the question might become, what do you do about those who are not ready? Nothing? We will ask you this. Does it feel good to say to yourselves, there is nothing I can do to assist those who are not ready? We would suggest that it might not. And that is because it is not on your paths of greatest expansion, nor is it your preference. So, if you could do something about those who are not ready, what might that be? It is to allow the fact that they are not yet ready. It is to cheer them on in the position that they are currently in, a position of limitation, a position of extraordinary expansion, a position that is bringing them more than you could ever fathom from your current conscious perspective. To cheer them on in their not readiness to awaken yet, the same way we might add, many have done for all of you. Have we answered your question? Jessie says thank you, and yes, thanks, Jessie. All right. Any other questions? And while you guys are thinking of questions, I'll just add, I think that readiness is still hard for those of us who are going through it, even. I mean, sure, it's hard to watch somebody else who's going through something, who is maybe still working through whatever it is they're benefiting by through the disease. But it's even harder when we feel that about ourselves. And I would say not even about disease. I mean, it kind of sucks for me to recognize there's something I'm on the verge of understanding and I feel it. I'm just not ready yet. It's a freaking pain in the ass. So So, I think, yeah, Jesse says, LOL, yes, definitely. Sure is, right? So I appreciate the perspective of the chorus because it's nice to feel that I could look at that differently, even if I don't yet. And they say that the possibility that something exists is the first manifestation of its existence. So I think that we being able to have these conversations with the chorus is the start of that perspective. And like they were just saying about we recognize that things are missing and then we get all sad and depressed and we feel lost. Like, how did we not know all this stuff wasn't here before 3 seconds ago? I think some of us are doing that right now as we move through awakening with readiness. I think we are recognizing that there is a place we can be in where we feel like we are open to whatever comes next, might be a definition of readiness. So we're recognizing that there is that place of readiness, and we're recognizing that we're not in it yet. Readiness for everything. Readiness for expansion, for awakening. Like there are pieces of ourselves that are moving into those places. And then there are pieces that are just not. I have parts of me that are just so not ready for some of this, and I see them. But I think that the ability to recognize that there is that place is the start of it coming, as opposed to perhaps a recognition that something went wrong or is wrong, that it isn't here yet. They're the two different perspectives. Thanks. Jesse says, I really appreciated the perspective on blame. Yes, me too. Speaking as a person who blames herself for shit all the time. Of course. And I have been working through a lot of beliefs on shame, blame, regret, remorse, obligation. These are all energetic cousins and they interweave in very interesting ways. And they're going to start talking about that more in the podcast. And it is a topic very much related to book 2 and time. So I think starting next week, they'll start talking in earnest about shame and me too. It's brutal. Okay. So, I'm ready for that topic. I would understand that many of you who have already vibrated to these conversations, like these live events, who are already here. The next topic you sort of move into is that one because it's so interrelated to the beliefs about time. And time is sort of what you start to release first. In the first book, there's a triangle. It's back there, but I think I can describe it. So it's illustration 2 or 3, and they talk about the 3 engines of reality. And it's time, distance, body in the triangle, and the human figure is sort of in the middle of it, basically experiencing the generation of the reality from these 3 engines, as they call it. It's a way of looking at it. It's not like fundamentally structured that way. It's just a way of understanding it. So there's time, distance, and body. And what I started to understand through that is those are the engines that we will awaken to. And there are actually more. How's that for freaking layered? So we are conscious today of these aspects of ourselves that seem to drive what we experience in our reality. That's as far as we've gotten. We're like, yeah, triangle, 3 points, explains it all. I'm ready. And that was a little mind blowing for me that I started to sense things beyond these 3 engines that we don't even have concepts for. But at the same time, it lightened my perspective on those 3 engines. It was like, oh, it keeps going. Like there's more to discover here. There's way more to discover here. There's more to us. And so they have expressed that one of the first engines that we are transforming by way of our energetic shifts is the engine of time. It'll start to behave differently, meaning it'll start to loosen up. We'll find that we can do more in shorter periods of time. We'll find that we don't quite have this mental framework as clearly as often of day, week, month. Like time just feels more fluid. Like, what day is it anyway? Does that even matter? Right? You start to move into like a different presence. And through that, you can begin to experience actually more of the universe through the present moment, that it's easier to be in because you're not constantly abstracting yourself out of the present moment by thinking about time. What day is it? When was I there? What am I going to do next? I'll do that tomorrow. It's the mental projection stuff. So, shame and blame and regret and remorse and obligation and all the ones that go with it are related to the ways that we held ourselves to linear time. And we'll talk about this more in the weeks to come. So don't worry if this is all like, what? This feels like a lot. That's fine. This evolves. But essentially, when we feel blamey of ourselves or others or shamey, we are blinding ourselves to the view of the present moment. Have you ever noticed when you feel like shit, you're all up in your head? Right? You're just like rerunning those awful things you did through your head. Yeah, it's an abstraction from the present moment. Pulls you right out. And so, in doing so, and this may feel like a little weird at first, but it'll make sense over time. In doing so, you are pulling yourself into linear time. And by way of that, you are not able to see more of the universe and of yourself and of the beautiful being that you are in that ever expanding present moment perspective, because you're busy locked in your head, blaming the shit out of yourself in a version of linear time. So Jesse says, I'm very curious to hear about this regret, remorse, obligation conversation. Yeah, it'll start next week, and then we can come back here on Tuesdays and talk about it. Bring all the stuff you feel bad about, because that's what it's about. And we'll talk about it in the podcast. But they and I guess maybe I started to refer to it first in our conversations together, but they're locked doors, really, is what they are. So imagine a hallway of linear time where there's exits everywhere. It's an infinite universe. But instead, we put up doors to those parts of ourselves by way of shame. So, like, there's something extraordinary through shame door number 1, but you can't even feel it because it's plastered with images of shit you feel ashamed of. And so, very naturally and often still unconsciously, we turn away from the things we are ashamed of. It feels awful to us. It feels awful to us because it was an effective barrier from moving forward in those directions, meaning off linear time and out into the universe. So consciously, we have things that we recognize like, yeah, that happened or is happening, and I feel bad about it. Where it starts to get really interesting are when you start to uncover unconscious beliefs that were driving the shame. It's like fascinating and also a little scary that like we are only just touching the tip of the shame iceberg. It sounds awful, and it kind of is from a certain perspective, but from another perspective, it's fascinating the things that we as a human collective feel ashamed of. And so you can think about this in terms of humanity as a group consensus. Are there not sort of these underlying senses of what we are that we're not exactly proud of? You feel it, right? You can't put your finger on it. Like maybe you can. You're like, oh, we always mess up the environment. Or okay, so you kind of are feeling it. That's the tip of the shame iceberg. It's massive. Enough that it kept an entire collective, an entire group, an entire civilization locked into the same definition of linear time. Yeah, Inez says, shame iceberg. It says, whoa, yeah. It's just starting. So, it's gonna be fine. We're fine. We're all still expanding. This is just part of what we're awakening to and what we're starting to understand about what we built. And all first season and all in the first book, when the chorus is like, this is colossal. This is galactic. This is like bigger than you can imagine. We are starting to step into the bigger than you can imagine part of it, which is literally bigger than we could have imagined 2 or 3 steps ago in awakening. And so we are moving through it. That's why we can finally see it, because we're not under its weight any longer. We're not needing to experience it unconsciously any longer. Now we're getting to the point where we can start to see it, which is incredible. So we might have time for one more question. If you guys have any today. And it says, thank you, Katie, in the chorus. Thank you. Thank you guys so much. We'll be back next week at this time. As far as I can tell, we're going to be doing this every Tuesday for a while. And you can submit your questions, even if you're not going to be there live. They'll answer it. So I'll open them up and we can talk through them. And then you can watch the recording and see what they said about your question. So awesome. Thank you, Linda, Desi, Ginger. Thanks, you guys. All right. Well, we are sending our love to you, and we will talk to you soon.